Hey everybody, Dave and Dave here. It's been a while. We've been off the air for about 6 months to a year. I'm not even sure. Time passes weirdly now. We haven't really come back with anything because we didn't feel we had anything to say. And as you know, we've said many times that we don't like fluff. And it's really important to us that if we're going to be talking to you, it's going to be about something important that's going to have a major impact on your business. And today we have a really important topic, and that's inflation. It's been about a decade since the United States has had any real inflation to speak of. And so for a lot of us, it feels like this is an abnormal thing. Like, what is this? Like, why are prices going up? This is not normal. It's supposed to be flat. And the fact is that that's not the case. Inflation is very normal. The fact that it was flat for so long, actually, Dave Nitzler here explained to me is not normal, because to me too, I was like, oh, this is crazy. And so as we were talking about it, we discussed that this would be a really good video, to do. And I reached out to him the other day and said, hey, let's do it today. And he said, that's great. And so we're doing it. And so for today's conversation, Dave's going to be leading the majority of it. I'll have some color on here. He's more educated in the world of economics and the governmental side and how all this is controlled and everything. To me, it's something I'm learning about. And I think he has a lot of really good stuff to say here. And you should listen because there's a lot going on. And I think that people who stay ahead of this are going to come out great. And people who don't pay attention to it or sort of think it's not going to be a big deal could really be in some serious trouble. So I'm going to turn it over to my dear friend Dave Nitzler here, who's going to educate us all on how to see the impacts in your business, what to do about it, and sort of timeframes you have, I think, to deal with this particular issue. So Dave, take it away, sir.
Yeah, thanks. I feel like that's a dangerous intro. I'm not an economist by any stretch. I did take econ in college. It was a minor of mine. I was a political science major, but I would say this is the first time I've ever been asked to speak on the subject. So I don't want to come off as an expert, but I am in and out of venues every day and having conversations with clients. And more, we're hearing about two things. We're hearing about people and prices. So I've got my 3 Ps here on how to battle inflation. It's people, products, and pricing. And we're going to get into that a little bit more detail. But first, Dave's right. He touched on this. And I know we have a global audience, which we really appreciate. And one of the assumptions that we're working under is that this should be affecting everyone because due to the COVID put a global crunch on supply chain, and a lot of the supply chains where they're struggling the most is with people, getting enough people to get throughput through the supply chain to get stuff into the hands of consumers. And when there's more demand than supply, what happens is prices go up. So it's no surprise. And for a number of years in the US, at least, Dave's right again that inflation has been very stagnant. Maybe 1% a year. And now we're starting to see 5% type inflation numbers. And we will feel that in the bar and restaurant industry. What I see a lot of and what will happen is your big suppliers. Here's where I see it real obvious is that food prices immediately go up. They view supply and demand. They're saying, look, we're not taking any hits here. And they are charging you more for, say, beef, steak, bread, whatever it is. Same thing on the alcohol side. Alcohol prices go up and they get you in these small increments. It's death by 1,000 cuts. All of a sudden, a bottle of this costs an extra $2. A keg of that costs an extra $5. And we're taking the impact of all these. Let me mute this if I can. We're taking the impact head on of all the price increases because on the supply side, people are assuming, rightfully so, that you're not going to tell them, hey, stop sending me major brand X, because they know that you're fairly married to that brand. And then we get very hesitant on the price side to adjust our pricing because people tend to be really dialed into the prices of a few things. Dave, stop me here at any time, but the one that everyone talks about the most is gas. People know how much fuel costs. So for example, over here, if you went pre-COVID, fuel was going for, I think, somewhere $2.15, $2, somewhere in that range. Now it's going $3.15, $3.50. people feel the price at the pump. That's why they call it that right away, because it's big signs in the middle of the road, pay this much for gas, and you're in there every so often buying your fuel. So you feel that impact. The next one is food and grocery.
Before you go too far,
Sure, Dave.
and maybe you're going to do this, I'm getting ahead of you, and if I am, I apologize.
Yeah.
And how does that gas price increase tie into the food and liquor? Or are you going to get to that as well?
Well, gas is unique. Gas is more of a supply side thing than it is labor. So with our food, when we get into food and bev, from what I think I understand, a lot of it is tied to labor and supply chain. That's not necessarily the case on gas. So I don't want to get into that conversation. That's a whole nother, don't want to have that conversation. It's just an example of inflation. Another one is automobiles. Have you tried to buy a used car lately? And they're almost hard to find. New cars they're not getting new cars produced because there's a shortage on the chips for the vehicles, which is a product of not having the people in the manufacturing centers to produce them. It's not a raw material shortage. So a lot of this is going back to labor. And those price increases are getting passed along. So the first thing is, don't be a unicorn. Don't feel like you need to be a unicorn out there when it comes to pricing. We'll tackle one of the P's right now, since we didn't plan this, so I'm just kind of winging it a little bit. So we recently had a client hire us to do a pricing analysis of their market, and this was just an analysis for their area, like maybe 3 square blocks. And we did the pricing analysis to get an idea of, are they priced properly in the market? Are competitors making adjustments they're not making? Do they need to be in front of that curve or behind the curve, depending on what your market position is? If you're a market leader in your area, people might be waiting to see what you do when it comes to price increases. And you might be the kind of person where people are not visiting you as a product of a price choice. You're a destination and people are going to come. And those type places can typically make quicker response to price increases. Whereas if you're more of corner bar, your corner neighborhood bar, and a lot of your regulars are feeling the effects of inflation, and now they come to the neighborhood bar and all of a sudden their beer is a little bit more, you might have to be a little bit more sensitive on how you raise prices. Maybe you can't raise them quite as much, or maybe there's some other things that you can do, which we're going to talk about that as well. Not everything needs to be a direct result of. You don't have to go price increase. You might be the place that says, I'm going to let everyone else raise their prices, and I'm going to try to leverage the fact that I'm not. But the bottom line answer is, you don't just take the hit. So if you're not going to raise prices, you want to have some operational things that you're going to do that are tangible, financially tangible, that you can point to and say, I'm saving money this way in order to compensate for not making a price increase. So I'm wandering around a little bit.
No,
Dave.
that's
Why don't you get me recentered on it?
Right. So that's the pricing side of it. And I've had similar conversations with clients, and some people are very aware of this. Some people are like, holy crap, I never thought about this. And I think that you're 100% right on understanding your position of it. Also understanding your proper competitive set. If you're looking at your pricing, making sure that you're being comparable against, not necessarily, you mentioned geography, but also sometimes it's outside of that geography. If we're a very specific type of venue, we're an Irish bar, our first competitor might be 5-10 miles away. But paying attention to that is really, really important. And whether or not you're going to be sensitive or aggressive, you really need to have a strategy on that side of it. You have to have a very well thought out, something you should be discussing every single week right now. This isn't something to make a knee-jerk decision on. Dave was paid well to do this work and was thanked greatly, because it was incredibly valuable, because making this decision in a vacuum is tough. It's really tough. So if you have the time to do, and I think that we need to really be clear on how valuable a competitive pricing set is and a competitive pricing analysis is. If you have the time to do that on your own, do it. If you don't, pay for it, because it's worth it to have that information. I mean, I can't even explain. Worth it's not the right word. It's necessary. It's critical to have that information to make that decision. And it's something you need to constantly be looking at right now. Usually we say, 2 to 4 times a year. Quarterly is excessive. Twice a year is probably enough. Once a year, maybe not enough. Now you should be looking at it constantly. Every month prices are changing. And just that last piece, I think Dave is, I don't know if you're going to get into the cost side of it. People pricing products. Yes, you are products. That's the third piece. So I'll segue into that. I'm watching. So I have a dashboard I give to all my clients. It's a cost change. It's a simple cost change report. It was this. It's now this. Red is it went up in price. Green went down. And I've never seen product wholesale cost change as much as I am now. It's insane. It's usually it's like 3 or 4 things. It's a little bar this thick. I have pages now of changes every single week for every client. So on that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Dave. I think that's the second P is product. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot here too. So I'm going to do my best in this unprepared way to cover some points here. One is product wise. Let's talk about alcohol for a minute. We're seeing so many substitutions happen. We're seeing at least where I am, we're seeing massive product substitutions
every day.
We're seeing bottle size substitutions happen. So typically where I am, so let's say this, in Atlanta, your standard bottle size is a liter. In the Carolinas, where I also am, not at the same time, is a 750. So we're seeing people swap in and out of these different and we're seeing people swap in and out of these bottle sizes, and also including handles or the 1750s. I've seen people getting the 350s in. I'm seeing all sorts of bizarre product sizes coming in. Okay. So one thing to consider is, look, we're probably not going to manage to that, but no, you're not always getting the same value relative to your pricing on those products. And what else from an execution perspective, if all you've got is this handle and you're starting to pour from a handle, the execution of that pour also becomes a lot tougher on your bartender team, which means you might be winning on some of the volume leverage on a 1750, but losing on some overpour or spill scenarios. It just confuses the bar. It's a very delicate ecosystem back there. And so that's one problem. The other thing on products, let's bounce to the kitchen for a minute. Take a really hard look at 2 things. Obviously, stuff that's not selling. If things aren't selling, it's a good time to just cut them from the menu. We preach this pre-COVID to simplify the business, but post-COVID with inflation, it's the same. We don't want to have high-priced products that don't move is a really bad combination in an inflationary environment. The other thing, the question would be, how many ways can I cook a chicken? There's a lot of things you can do with a chicken. How much can I do with bread? I can make it a calzone. I can make a pizza. I can do breadsticks. You guys know this stuff way better than I do. But if we can take the same product, make it 5, 6, 7 different ways, and we like the profitability on that product, we can simplify the kitchen, get more productive in what we do, and sort of mitigate those inflationary effects. Productivity is one of the, if you're not going for the direct on the nose, we're going to raise prices as prices increase on us. That's one thing. We talked about that in terms of products, being productive. This is people and products, being productive with both your products and your people. That's the way that you offset inflationary effects. There's a lot of things that many of you probably already know are opportunities in your business that you just haven't been taking advantage of. Run a very lean operation. Don't order more than what you need. Don't order expensive products that don't move or should be your first kill shots here. I still see people ordering a lot of stuff that they just don't need. And oftentimes they're not ordering that stuff because they want it. Someone's walked into the venue and sold them something. I'll give you a really good deal on this if you'll just buy a bunch of that. And in the end, you didn't need this or that. Like things were cruising along just fine, but we're doing someone else a favor, doing them a solid, whatever it might be. Just be really careful of the deals. During any period, I always preaching to folks to run their business lean. We are almost in a just-in-time inventory world. We don't have massive lead times on stuff. And I also see some nefarious stuff going on. Like I've got now sales reps are getting onto people that are smart about being lean, and they'll go in and say, hey, I don't know how long we're going to have this. You may want to order a 2-year supply just to be sure. Look, that's great. Why don't you take all your money, give it to someone else, and put, all this supply that you don't need in stock? I loathe those ideas. And there are salesmen out there taking advantage of some of this fear mongering stuff when it comes to supply shortages. Look, that's their job to figure it out. It's their job. And this is what I would say. It's your job to make sure when I put an order in, it shows up at my door. Okay. And if you can't do that, I need to go find someone else who will. That's your job. It's not my job that because you can't do your job, I need to give you more of my money sooner. Run that one by me again, because Dave confused. I don't like that idea. So it might be necessary. I'm not advocating that you run out of high volume products. You have high volume products and you want to get good deals on high volume products. Okay. But I'm not in for overstocking stuff that doesn't move. We are in a just-in-time inventory world. Exercise your leverage on that and make other people's supply chains work on your behalf. So I'm a big believer in that. Drive simplicity, be lean, take advantage of the deals that make sense for you, and cut out products that are slow moving, low margin or high dollar items. So
if I may, I agree with all that. I would have said all those words almost the same way. It's exactly how I feel about it as well. There's a slightly more micromanaging concept that I'm gonna pop in here. And I'm going to give 2 examples and a third where I'm going to stay away from brand name. I'm not trying to piss anybody off. For the first time in 15 years, there's an incredibly popular light beer brand. I won't say who. You guys will figure it out, I'm sure, on your own. That went up in price, and it didn't go up in a small amount per bottle. It was something like 17 cents a bottle. The case price went from like $23.20 to $27 or $28. I've never seen a jump like that in my 20 years of doing this. I've never seen anything like it. And they are a market leader. As Dave said, if you're a market leader, you have more power and leverage, and they are. And so it looks like they did. And that's something I want to encourage everybody to be very careful of, because here's my other 2 stories. Two bars, one in Baltimore, one in DC, one I worked with and ran, and one was a client. Both were some of those popular bars in their area. They were killing it for years, always. One wouldn't serve Budweiser products because one day Budweiser pissed him off. He said, I'm not putting it in here. The other one had a sign on the back bar that said, no politics, no Miller Lite. That was the DC bar. Both of them did exceedingly well. And I'm giving these 2 competing brands, so don't get in trouble here or piss anybody off, that you don't have to be wedded to a brand. Your clients aren't going to walk out because you don't have the brand new hot product. So you have the ability to choose what's behind your bar. And if the price goes up to a point where you can no longer afford to serve it at the price you've been serving it for, and you don't want to increase the price, or you do want to increase the price and you're still like, this margin isn't what I need, there's nothing wrong with switching out to something else. It's never been more important, in my estimation, to keep an incredibly close eye on what you're paying per bottle. And additionally, as Dave mentioned before, the unit cost. And so this is the other concept that I have in my head here. I'm just looking down. I have a note here, so don't mess this up. When they do switch you from a liter to a 750, if you've worked out any sort of case deals or any sort of agreement with those people, as Dave said, their supply chain issues don't need to become your problem. So my savvy clients have gone to their suppliers and said, look, I see that you're out of the liters, and that's fine. We negotiated a price per liter that leads to a certain price per unit. You need to fix this for me, not me fix it for myself. And they do. They've had no issues with it. But if you don't ask, they're not going to do it. They say, oh, I'm sorry, I ran out. It's the bottles are coming from China. We don't have it. And they will gladly push that cost increase over to you unless you ask. And if they say no, I'll tell you right now, I've talked to 5 different clients about 5 different tequilas. and they all say it's the best one to put in their margarita, and all their customers agree. And they could easily switch out to any one of those other five. There is no, actually, one of my favorite clients has a sort of a saying that there is no magical best product out there. People's tastes are different from place to place, from person to person. Nitzel over here loves Heffa. I love IPAs, and we disagree on the other side. I don't really like Hefeweizen. He doesn't really like IPAs, and we're both right.
Telling my secrets, Dave.
So don't get stuck in the idea that if I don't have this cinnamon whiskey, people are going to leave. There's tons of cinnamon whiskeys out there that are fantastic, that people love and they'll be fine with. And if one goes way up in price, that shouldn't be your problem. So that's my spiel on taking care of yourself. Similar idea to Dave here. Don't let them define what you buy and how much you pay for it. You still have that power. You still have that control. The suppliers need you more than you need them, because there are many, many suppliers, but there's not that many great bars that you own and run, or great restaurants that you have in your portfolio. So with that, I think the last concept here, Dave, is, and unless you sort of started touching on, is the people side.
Yeah. Let me touch on one more thing about products.
Please.
Pay really close attention to your invoices. So I have noticed, it comes as no surprise that there's a lot of shortages. Now, not every, in the Carolinas, they still go to the government package store and they have to, people have to procure their own stuff and drive it back to the bar, which, but in Atlanta, you get a delivery. And I think most of the world is getting a delivery. Keep a really close eye on your invoices, because there's a lot of shortages and they're not always caught. And so you can if you're just kind of going through the motions, or you have someone in the back who's just grabbing the invoice and writing a check, that's bad news. The second thing about that is, and watch this really close. So I have a lot of clients that get a specific case deal here in town on a very, very, very popular vodka product. It is. And let's just say that deal is buy 4, get 1 case free. Okay. And let's say that there's a shortage where they can't ship all the cases. Guess which one doesn't get shipped?
The free one.
The free one. That's exactly right. Well, hey, why am I not getting the free one? Right. So how do I know when is the free one coming? And I need to actually be tracking, hey, you still owe me a free case of this vodka or whatever it is. Whenever it's buy 3 bottles, get 1 bottle free, it's the free one that doesn't show up. I contend I should still get my deal. That's not my problem. You're affecting our deal. If it's buy 3, get 1 free, then I expect buy 2, get 1 free, and then you can ship me the one I need to pay for later on back order. Good luck with that. But what I want you to be aware of is that they owe you that free product off the invoice. So do a really good job. Pay close attention to shortages on your invoice, because it's not always caught at the time you place the order. Sometimes that gets caught at the time where it's getting loaded onto their truck, and so your invoice hasn't been updated, and you will very easily pay for stuff. So you can put all this work in to getting deals that make sense to offset inflation, and then oops, where's my free case? So I throw that out there as well.
If you don't have a strong receiving process, put one in today. Mm-hmm. Somebody should be counting everything coming in, marking the invoice, and then somebody, maybe that person, but somebody who's aware of all the deals needs to be reviewing that information every single week, and then looking at over the course of a month or so to make sure, like Dave said, you're getting the deals, whether it's a substitution, a missing case. Again, the clients who are being the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? My clients who are paying attention and going, hey, where the hell's my free case? They'll get their free case. The people who are just going, I don't know what's behind my bar, you're losing. In no uncertain terms, you are losing.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
So in terms of people, this is the one that people are asking me the most about, is where can I get people? First off, I think we'd all agree if you said, hey, what's a good employee worth to you? It's usually a fairly big number, and what's a bad one worth? It's a really low number, and I see people getting desperate about hiring, and if you can walk through the door right now, you're probably going to get hired for a job. And anyone running a place with some fairly significant standards knows that that's a fast path to hurting your brand. So I've been keeping a close eye on this, and I will say this, and I can't prove what I'm about to say, but I see people doing it and I applaud it. There's an old, I think, fallacy in retail that says you can't make money when you're not open. So be open as much as you possibly can be.
Yeah.
But being open as much as you possibly be isn't necessarily a recipe for profitability. And is it true that you need to be open on Mondays and Tuesdays? Is it true that you need to be open for every single lunch? And I think people are starting to find out that they don't need to be. So this is a little bit of a scatter shot here, but a few things. One is, we talked about this pre-COVID, evaluate your shifts and when you really need to be open. Contemplate whether or not you can take the energy from not running a day shift and put all that energy into running an amazing night shift that, let's say, starts from, let's say it's 4 to 2 a.m. But you have the total focus of your team. Can you execute as a level that compensates for not being open for lunch? And in many cases, the answer is yes. If you take and hey, we don't work 7 days anymore, we work 6, and everyone's guaranteed a certain day off, and now they come in more charged for a shift than what they were before, less burnout, more enthusiasm. I encourage you to take a really hard look at that when it comes to staffing. There's more than one way to solve this. So that's one. The second thing is, I say, pay talent. If someone's worth money, show them, pay them what they're worth, and do more with less people. I would rather have a star that can handle 8 tables than 2 duds handling 4, right? You can get into those scenarios where, if I can do more with less, let me reward the people that are doing a good job. We're not just competing anymore with other restaurants for staff. We're competing with everybody. I mean, there's help wanted signs. I don't know what it's like in Miami, Dave, but
Same
okay.
thing.
So help wanted signs everywhere. Where'd everyone go? Right. I keep people crossing the border, all this stuff. Where is everybody? Right. Like what happened? Well, I think what happened is there was a lot of free money given out. And I'm not talking about just unemployment, but there was there were trillions of dollars spent in the US and around the world on compensating people for staying home. And I think 2 things happened. People paid down debt with money. They got used to staying home. They reconsidered their career choices. So people have money in the bank. I think there's like an extra something like, don't quote me on this, but there's something like an extra $1 trillion that Americans have now saved up that they're not moving on. Credit card debt for the average Americans at an all-time low. And people got used to staying home. So and people started finding stay-at-home jobs, which is very, very appealing. So you have a lot of things that you're competing against that you were never competing against before. And a lot of people in bar and restaurant industry were sort of transient. They were in between jobs. So let me pick up a gig. I used to be a server. Let me pick that up for some supplemental income. There was people that had their degrees in something else, but they were so talented in hospitality that they didn't leave it. And then COVID gave them an opportunity to reconsider that, and they left the industry. And then the third piece is, you had people that just, look, man, hey, they walk in the door, I need a job. Well, people are competing for that person now, and they're selling their services to the highest bidder. They're not.
Yep. And I actually had two bartender friends who learned coding when everything was closed, and they were really good at it. And they're coding now. Look, I'm making great money coding for people in actually it's in Vegas. They're coding for people in Vegas doing, I don't know, apps. Two concepts that you and I have discussed in the past. You touched on one briefly, but I want to make sure the other one doesn't go. Is number one, speaking of Miami and the culture here, I have a brand new client wonderful people, and they're closed Monday, Tuesday in an area where there's a high amount of tourists. They're eventually thinking to reopen. But even now, you could do lunch business. They're like, we're not going to do it. It's just not enough. And it annoys our people. So when they go to hire, first off, they need less people, which you touched on briefly, but I think that's a big concept. If I don't need as many people, then my hiring problems are less. Secondly, and this is your ideas. I'm stealing this from Nitzel over here. There you go. Point in the right direction. At least on my screen. I don't know which way I'm pointing there. Is advertise the fact that you're only open Tuesday through Sunday. If you're going to do it, if you're not going to do mornings, if you're going to be closed on Mondays, people appreciate that. So if that's not in your help wanted ad, if you're not telling everybody, hey, you work here, you never have to work a dog Monday lunch shift ever, because I'm closed. We might have you clean every once in a while, but we'll give you pizza or beer or whatever. So make sure you're using that as part of your benefits package, really, for servers and bartenders. It would have been a big deal for me. I don't have to work a shift where I'm standing in the back, now looking at my phone, back in the day, smoking a cigarette or whatever. So advertise that. And then just to reiterate what Dave said, you do that, you will get higher quality people. You're going to get those people who say, hell yeah, I'll do this and I can make great money still. I'm in. I'm 100% in. So that's what I wanted to make sure we didn't forget on that one.
Thanks for that. I would say in our industry, we do a magnificent job of really thinking through how do we become the destination of choice for customers, for guests. I mean, we work our fingers to the bone on that question. If I take and ask you the question, how hard do you work at becoming the destination of choice for employees? It's fascinating to me how little effort we put into that question when it's those very people that have to execute the strategy that we spend all this time grinding on about how do we become the destination of choice for guests. So put that kind of creativity. I say it all the time. This is the hardest working, most creative, dedicated industry I've ever been a part of. But sometimes very narrow-minded focus about where we apply that hard work and that creativity. And it's often not on the employment side. And how do I become the employer that everyone's talking about? Yeah, you can. So like if you start piling stuff on in a simple job ad that says, look, you're guaranteed 2 days in a row off. I'm making this up, whatever it might be, but you guaranteed 2 days in a row off, starting the highest starting pay. That we have a certain level of demand, but we also have a very high level of expectation. Like we're just not hiring anyone because here's the other, and I'll stop on the people thing. When we get desperate, nothing chases off talented people faster than shitheads, right? So when you hire in people who don't carry their weight when they're problematic, that is frustrating for high performers. High performers want to be around other high performers, yep. Right? And chaotic drama folks want to be around chaos and drama because that's where they thrive, right? It hides their ineptitudes. So we want to have talented people. We want to advertise the things that attract talented people. And then when we get them, we have to make sure that we understand how to manage talented people well. And that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole other concept.
But that's the idea, guys, is take your creativity and put it towards how do we become the destination of choice for talented people. And if you can't get excited around that, you can only get excited around creating a destination of choice for guests. Connect the dots on, hey, I can't do X without Y. And if we put those two things together, you're going to have a really nice scenario in terms of revenue and profits and quality.
I'm doing the same thing, by the way. I increased my starting wage by 15% from 13 to 15. I've changed my entire rate structure for my employees. To do so, I increased my rate structure for my business, not for me to attract, hire and retain amazing people. And I've asked my clients, what would be more important to you, that you pay a little less or that you have somebody who's with you for 5 years who you can count on and trust? They said, oh God, the second one. I said, great. I've had no pushback. The new people I'm signing up are saying, my God, this is cheap for what you're providing. This is amazing. So I've done that, and I've handled it a very particular way, and I won't get into details, but I was very meticulous about explaining, very carefully. Here's why my rates are going up. One, we're to get better people in and keep them, so you have better, better service, and it's worked just fine for me. I haven't had any issues so far. So this is not just something that we're saying to do. Like I'm practicing this constantly.
Yeah. A great way, Dave, to create some loyalty for folks in the business is ask your team what they want. So, hey, what would keep you around 5 years? What would keep you from leaving? What can I do that would really excite you? And if you let them determine some of that, this is a little, what do they call it? Business hack, life hack.
Yes.
So people will always work their own solutions harder than they will your solutions, because people don't like to be wrong. So sometimes, all things being equal, I'll let if Dave comes to me with a bad idea and I know Dave's idea is a bad one and I've got a good one of my own, sometimes I'll go ahead and let Dave work his bad idea, because I know Dave will take it to the end of the earth to try to prove his bad idea right. Versus a 50% effort on my good idea.
You're making me look so good here, man.
I'm making all that up.
No,
but the idea is, if you go to your team and say, hey, what would really make you happy? How do we attract people? What would make you sticky around here? When you put those in, they own those solutions. So they get to look around and see that they're contributing to the business. And there's a lot of loyalty that you create there. And that's the kind of loyalty and stickiness that'll keep people from leaving over 50 cents an hour.
Yep.
And so there's, again, that's a whole nother.
That's great.
Whole nother video.
One thing we skated over, and I meant to bring it up at the end of the product side, is, and I'm sorry to stick this right after people, one way to monitor. So we talked about monitoring invoices, and this is really important, so I have to say it. Another way to monitor if you're starting to have a problem in your business is your potential cost of goods. And what that is that's your, it's based on your sales mix. It has nothing to do with your losses. It's purely what's going through the point of sale and what you moved, what you're moving and what price you're moving it at through the point of sale. Because that's going to tell you how much people are paying for what they're intending to purchase, right? You might have other issues in loss sides, but that's not what we're talking about here. So for the inflation side of things, if you can monitor that number, which most point of sales, it's a very time consuming process, which is why every one of my clients has us do it. They don't do it through their point of sale, but every modern point of sale, and most even of the older ones, if you enter all your costs in there and keep them up to date, they will tell you what that number is. Now that's incredibly time consuming. You might not have time for that if you don't hire somebody. I'm seeing that number climb aggressively. I have multiple clients where it's gone up by 200 basis points, for the educate. He taught me that one, which is like 2%. So it went from 17% to 19% cost of goods. And it's like, holy crap, where's this coming from? Well, some of it's coming from inflation. Now there's other factors, but it's an indicator. So just something to pay attention to. And the last thing before we get off here today, Dave, and I think this is a really important thing for everybody to understand. And I'm going to turn this question over to you, because I don't have an answer. I don't know if there is an answer, but I want to see what yours is. So what I know is this: there's a window like this one here that of time that people have to deal with this inflation thing and have their customers be more okay with it. And let's say we're increasing prices. We have a window of time. And after that window of time, things will stabilize at some point, months, years, I don't know. And it'll stabilize. And then everything will look flat again. And there's a certain time between that stabilization period, the beginning of it, and sometime into it, where people are going to say, why the frick are you raising your prices, man? This is ridiculous. Everything's so expensive already. So people don't perceive time well. So they're not going to realize necessarily that you never increased your rates in your prices in the first place. So there's a window. And Dave, what do you think that is? What does that look like?
Well, that's an interesting question. That's where we touched on it at the very beginning when it came to the pricing analysis. Do you want to lead on this? Are you a market leader that's going to lead on price increase? Are you going to be a laggard and you just need to know where you are? However, I think there is a window. Whenever something's top of mind, it tends to not need to be explained. So it's very obvious to me, we go out to eat quite a bit, obviously. And it's very obvious to me that we're paying significantly more money for things than what we used to. But, 2 years ago, I probably would have been put off by some of the checks I've received. I would have said, what's going on here? How did I pay $100 for pizza and beer? How did that happen? I understand what's going on right now. So then I've got to make some choices as a consumer. What can I afford? Can I still afford to go out and spend? Do I understand why that's happening? And those are decisions that have to be made. But I think what you're asking is, can you be a little late to the party? And in my opinion, the answer is yes.
And how late then?
From a perception perspective, you can be a little late to the party on this, where you find yourself having to explain the whys of your business. And we talked about this. I think this is all, but I feel like I'm a broken record on some of these things. But there were things that people understood during COVID around, seating and hours of operation. And we even talked about price. We talked about some of this stuff just in a different context.
Yeah.
And people are not stupid. They understand that things right now cost more. The chances that within their own business, whatever they do for a living, they're struggling with the exact same things that you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, people understand. And if you find that you're getting a ton of pushback and you're seeing that people are making other decisions, maybe you pushed it too far, and you can rein that in fairly quickly. It doesn't take you long to figure out if you've pushed too far in a direction or not. And your regulars will often be quick to tell you. But I think, Dave, it's an interesting way to put it. I think there is a window. Inflation, you talked about this maybe we're getting close to the end here, but inflation is a natural part of the economic order. Some things can become less expensive, like a computer or a cell phone, once upon a car phone. I'm old enough to remember that.
Battery pack.
Once you get past the initial investment that people have to get back, that return on the initial investment, the bloody tip of the sword type of stuff, and there's some competition created, you can see initial introductory prices be really high, and you can see markets adjust. But if we go back to gasoline, that's an easy one. My dad will tell me, I used to get gas for 10 cents a gallon. Look, those days are never coming back. Right? Gas is only going to go long-term in one direction. It's a little bit like stock markets. You may see some ebb and flow, but it's ebbing and flowing like this, not like that. Right. So that's why buying into the stock market long-term is always a pretty safe play. Inflation is the same story. Prices are going to go up. I think what's unusual, at least in America, or I should say the US, in the short strokes here, is that it's just been flat for so long. And we went through the bubble, the housing crisis and all that, sort of demand plummeted. So demand goes down, prices will go down. And now we've got these weird labor shortages, and demand is up, labor is down. So people are paying more for labor, and it's harder to get stuff. Demand's up. It's all very natural what's happening. But it's also unusual, and we have to react well to it. So you could put temporary price increases in. And I was at a place, and then I will shut up. I was at a place where there's a wing shortage, one of my regular joints, and they put a sign, chicken wings, huge chicken wing shortage.
Oh yeah, processing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it used to be all you could eat chicken wings for lunch for
Right.
$12.99, right? So you could just go in there.
Yeah.
Well,
take me there when I visited.
all you can eat chicken wing, and they said on there, all you can eat chicken wing now for lunch is $17.99 until things get back to normal. And I read it on the door, and I was like, yeah,
yep,
I get it.
Right.
I totally get it. Maybe I don't, but maybe I get a burger for lunch instead of the chicken. but I get it. Yes. So that's it, Dave. I'll let you wrap this thing up.
No, I think that's a really good closing point. And I think the concept of timing is a good one. Pay attention to it. It goes back to the first things we were talking about here, which is have a strategy. constantly be evaluating it. Things are changing aggressively and quickly and a bit chaotically. So make sure this is something that you're looking at at least once a month. Really, it should be every week. I don't think you can get away with every month. Actually, you should be paying attention to your invoices. Pay attention to what you're paying. Pay attention to your cost or profit, depending on which way you look at it. I know in the Australia, because we talked to a lot of people, they look at the profit side, whatever it is, pay close attention to these numbers, because some of it's jumping, but some of it is like Dave said, it's creeping up. And if you let it creep away from you before it's too late, then you're gonna be in trouble, in serious trouble, and you'll be there. I'm thinking there's probably going to be another round of restaurants closing in the next couple of years. That's a sort of an aftershock of all this. The obvious ones, got hurt in the middle of COVID for obvious reasons. And I think there's going to be an aftershock for those who don't pay attention to it. So please don't be one of those. Make this a priority in your business. And that's what I'll close with. Any other final words, Mr. Nitzel?
Well, look, it was good to be back. It's been a long time, right? It's been like a year and a half, Dave, since we've done it.
We had nothing to say. I know.
Yeah. So we'll post this somewhere, wherever the socials are. And
wherever you're seeing it now.
Yeah. And then if you have any questions, feel free to engage us. We'll do our best. We don't have all the answers. We may just have some ideas that get you to better answers than the ones.
I should have done at the beginning. Buy a copy of the book. It's amazing. Sales have gone up, which is awesome. Right.
And that really is awesome. For all of you out there that have been buying the hell out of the book, really appreciate that. That's been really cool.
I should have started with that. What's wrong with me?
Yeah. We're not the best marketing guys. So do appreciate that. And if you think that book can help someone, we appreciate the recommendation. And if you have some questions for us or comments, we'll do our best to engage and help you and point you in a direction. So Awesome. Appreciate the attention, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. See you later.